The cold Harmattan wind howled through the cracked windows of the tiny bungalow in Oyo town as 10-year-old Ife sat alone on the front steps, her eyes wide with confusion. Her small fingers clutched the torn hem of her faded dress. Her feet were bare, dusty from sweeping the compound since dawn. Inside the house, her stepmother, Madame Sard, paced furiously. "You think you're better than my children because your mother gave you long hair and fair skin, Abi?" Madame Sard hissed, her voice laced with jealousy as she looked at Ife. The little girl didn't respond. She was used to it. She'd learned that silence was safer, but that night was different. Later, when Ife was fast asleep on a raffia mat in the corridor, away from the comfort of the other children's room, Madame Sade tiptoed out of the house. She wasn't alone. A tall man with a scar over his left eye stood by the gate. He looked like he didn't belong there, with his leather boots and the shiny silver chain hanging from his pocket. "She's inside. Do whatever you want with her. Just pay me what we agreed," Madame Sade whispered. Her hands were trembling, but her eyes stayed cold. The man didn't speak. He handed her an envelope, thick, stuffed with money. Sade didn't even count it. Minutes later, Ife was jerked awake by a rough hand clamping over her mouth. She kicked and screamed into the stranger's palm, but no one came, not even her stepmother, who was pretending to snore loudly behind her locked bedroom door. The man dragged her out into the night, and just like that, she was gone. The next morning, when neighbors asked where Ife was, Sade cried crocodile tears. "I woke up and she was gone. Oh, maybe she went to look for her mother's grave," she wailed. Nobody suspected a thing. No one knew that a child had just been sold like a bag of beans. What happened to Ife that night? Who was the man with the scar? And what did he want with a little girl? The truth would remain buried for years until fate brought the past crashing into the present in the most unexpected way. The ride was long, silent, and filled with fear. Ife sat in the back seat of the dusty SUV, tears rolling down her cheeks, too scared to scream again. Her small body trembled as she stared at the man driving. His face stayed stiff, that scar above his eye looking even more terrifying in the moonlight. He didn't say a word. He didn't even look back at her. Hours passed. They finally arrived at a remote compound outside Ibadan. Old gated property with tall trees and no neighbors in sight. The gate creaked as it opened. Ife's heart pounded as she was dragged into the house. Inside, the place smelled of dust and old paint. The man locked the door behind them and finally spoke. "You'll work here. You'll clean, cook, and keep quiet. No crying, no questions. If you behave, you eat. If you don't, you'll regret it." Ife didn't answer. She just stared at him, too frozen to blink. In that moment, she realized her life as she knew it was over. From that day on, she became a shadow in that house. Each morning before the sun rose, she was up, scrubbing floors, fetching water from the well, washing the man's clothes, cooking his meals. Her hands bled from the work. Her feet cracked from walking barefoot on the hot compound. She didn't go to school. She didn't see other children. The man known only as Baba Leoniv, he didn't beat her, but the fear of what he could do kept her quiet. One day, while cleaning the bookshelf in his study, she found a torn newspaper stuffed between dusty volumes. She opened it with trembling hands. Her heart skipped. There, on the front page, was a picture of a smiling woman, her late mother, Mrs. Abimbola Onabanjo Dees, in car crash, her fortune locked in legal battle. Ife's hands shook. She had never known the full story of her mother's death. Madame Sade always refused to talk about it, but the article revealed more. Her mother had been a successful businesswoman, owner of Onabanjo Textiles. When she died, her only child was meant to inherit everything, but only after she turned 18. That was the moment Ife understood. She wasn't just a burden. She was worth something. Her stepmother had sold her to keep her away from her inheritance. But why had Baba Lai taken her in? Was he keeping her hidden until she came of age? Was he working with someone else? A new kind of fear settled in her chest, fear, mixed with burning curiosity. That night, as she lay on the cold floor in the corner of the kitchen, she whispered to herself, I will survive this. I will find out everything. And one day, I'll go back. But as Ife plotted her quiet escape, she didn't know that someone from her past had started asking questions, someone who might just change the course of her fate forever. 15-year-old Ife had grown taller, leaner, and sharper. Years had passed, but her memories of that night never faded. Each day spent serving Babalai deepened her silence, but inside, her mind raced, counting time, watching him, searching for answers. She no longer cried. She no longer begged. But every night, she would sneak back into the study when Babalai slept, digging through papers and drawers, hoping to find something, anything that could link her to her past. One evening, while dusting the old wardrobe in the back room, Ife found a locked metal box tucked behind piles of useless junk. It was different, newer, clean. The lock was simple, and it only took a rusted spoon and determination to break it open. Inside were files, bank documents, and a stack of envelopes. She opened one and froze. At the top of the page was the name Onabanjo Holdings. Her breath caught in her throat. That was her mother's company. The document showed that Babalai had been receiving monthly payments from a mysterious trustee linked to the Onabanjo estate. Why? Why would someone be paying him while she was hidden, abused, and stripped of everything? She flipped through the remaining documents and found one envelope addressed to a name she hadn't heard in years. Mr. Dauda Onabanjo, guardian. Her uncle. Her real uncle. Suddenly, pieces started coming together. The money wasn't from Babalai's own planet, was part of a legal guardianship fund. It meant her uncle had no idea what she was here. That night, Ife made a decision. She would escape. But before she could form a full plan, something happened. A knock came at the compound gate. Firm. Repeated. Babalai wasn't home. He'd gone to the nearby village and told her to stay inside. But the knock came again, louder, thinner voice. I'm looking for a girl named Ife Onabanjo. Her blood turned cold. How did anyone know her name? She tiptoed to the window and peeked out. Standing at the gate was a man in a tailored brown suit. His face looked familiar, though older and worn. And beside him was a younger man, holding a photograph. She couldn't see it clearly, but she knew it was of her. They were asking for her. Heart pounding. She reached for the back door. But that's when Babalai's motorcycle roared into the compound. He had come back. Ife had only seconds to make a choice run toward the gate and the strangers who might be her saviors, or hide and hope they didn't leave. She chose to run. But as she dashed out of the house, Babalai saw her. He leapt from the bike, shouting, "Get back here!" Ife screamed, pushing her legs harder than she ever had before. "Help me!" she cried, her voice shaking the silence of the compound. The man at the gate turned sharply. "Ife," he called out. Babalai lunged just as she reached the gate, but someone else grabbed her first. A pair of arms caught her, strong and familiar. "Uncle Dauda?" she whispered, her voice trembling. His eyes filled with tears. "My God, it's really you." But before he could say more, Babalai pulled out a knife. A blade gleamed in the air. Shouts filled the compound. Someone screamed. And in one terrifying moment, everything exploded into chaos. The air split with a scream as Babalai lunged forward, the rusty knife flashing under the setting sun. Uncle Dauda shoved Ife behind him, his arm extending like a shield as he faced the madman head-on. The younger man who had come with him, a quiet, observant fellow named Bayo, darted to the side, reaching into his jacket. "Back off!" Babalai roared. His eyes, wild and furious, locked onto Ife like she was his property. "Ife, don't move," Uncle Dauda barked, voice shaking but strong. But Ife couldn't move if she tried. Her body had gone numb, her legs frozen in fear. All she could do was watch. The compound, once her prison, had become a war zone. Bayo stepped forward, flashing a police ID. "Drop the knife. You're surrounded. Do you know who you're holding?" "I don't care," Babalai spat. "She's mine. I fed her. I raised her. She's mine." "No," Dauda growled, stepping closer. "She's my niece. and you've hidden her for almost 10 years. You'll pay for this." The next moment unfolded in slow motion. Babalai swung the knife. Uncle Dowda ducked, grabbing a long stick from the ground and swiping at his legs. The blade grazed his arm just, a scratch, but the distraction worked. Bayo tackled Babalai from behind, slamming him into the dry, red soil. The knife skidded across the ground. "Ife!" Dowda turned, his voice desperate now. "Come here." She stumbled forward, tears flooding her eyes. For years, she'd wondered if anyone remembered her, if her real family even cared. And now, here was this man, her uncle, bleeding, furious, and fighting to bring her home. They held each other for a long time. Then, she finally whispered, "Why did it take so long?" Dowda's face broke, as if the question shattered something in him. "We were told you ran away. That Sard couldn't find you. We searched. God knows, we searched everywhere." His hands trembled as he touched her face. "I should have known she lied. I should have fought harder. I thought you forgot me," she said softly. He pulled her into a full embrace. "Never." Behind them, Bayo was handcuffing Babalai, who spat blood and curses, his voice growing weaker. "You think this ends me? You think you can take her back? That girl is cursed. Her mother died, and she'll bring ruin to you all." But no one listened anymore. Not the neighbors who had gathered at the gate, whispering in shock, nor the small group of police who had arrived minutes later, alerted by Bayo's earlier call. They saw the truth now, what had really gone on behind those tall walls. Ife wasn't a runaway. She was a prisoner. The ride back to Ibadan felt unreal. Ife sat in the back of the police van, wrapped in Uncle Dowda's jacket. Her body was shaking, not from fear, but from release, like her bones had been holding tension for years and were finally letting go. Bayo sat beside her, giving her gentle glances. "You're safe now. We're taking you home." "Where's home?" she asked. Dowda turned around from the front seat. "Lagos. You have a room there. A bed. Family." Lagos. She'd only heard about the city on the radio. Big roads, lights everywhere. She couldn't imagine it. All she'd ever known was this dusty town, this painful compound, this dark life. When they reached the family house, Ife couldn't believe her eyes. It was a white bungalow with a flower garden and large windows. Children laughed in the distance. Aunt Ronka Dowda's whiff ran to the gate, arms wide open, tears pouring down her face. Behind her, two teenage girls peeked from the doorway, eyes wide with curiosity. "Ife!" Aunt Ronki hugged her so tightly. Ife gasped for breath. "She looks just like her mother," she whispered. "My God." They took her inside, bathed her, fed her warm yam porridge with real fish, and tucked her into a soft bed with clean sheets. That night, for the first time in years, Ife slept without fear. Days passed. Ife slowly began to heal. She was quiet at first, always watching, always alert. She flinched at sudden sounds. She didn't laugh. But little by little, the family's warmth melted her fears. She learned her cousins' names, Tola and Dara, and found they were kind, even playful. They gave her clothes, showed her how to use a smartphone, even played music for her. But the biggest surprise came the following week. Uncle Dowda sat her down one evening in the living room. "Ife," he began, "we've opened a case against Said. She sold you, and she'll face the law. But there's more." He brought out a dusty brown file. "This is your mother's will. You are the sole heir to Onabanjo Textiles. But we couldn't access anything because, well, legally, you disappeared." Ife blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means," Aunt Ronki said gently, "you're a very wealthy young woman. But more importantly, it means your mother wanted you to carry on her name." "I don't know anything about running a business," she whispered. "You will," Dowda replied, "and you won't do it alone, I promise." Months passed. Ife returned to school. She started therapy. She learned about her mother's company, visited the textile factory in Abeokuta, and even met some of the workers who remembered her mum fondly. They all said the same thing: "You have her eyes." But it wasn't just business that began to change. Ife started writing. At night, She would scribble in her notebook memories, stories, pieces of her broken past stitched together with hope. It became her therapy, her way of remembering and letting go. One day, she showed Uncle Dowda a story she wrote. It was called The Girl Behind the Gate. He read it silently, then looked at her. "You have a gift." She smiled for the first time in months. But peace doesn't last forever. Just when life felt calm, a letter arrived. It was from prison. Baba Lai. He wanted to talk. Ife stared at the envelope for hours. She didn't want to open it. She didn't want to remember, but something inside her, the same fire that kept her alive in that compound, told her she needed to know what he had to say. When she finally tore it open, it read, "Ife, you think you've won. But I was only a tool. Someone paid me to keep you hidden. I did what I had to do to survive. But the person who truly betrayed you was closer than you think. Ask your uncle why he waited so long to find you. Ask him about the first payment. Ask him who really benefits if you never claim your name. Lei." The words hit her like a slap. She sat frozen, the letter in her hands. Had he lied? Was this just another trick? Or was there truth buried in his hate? That night, she went to Uncle Dowda. He sat with her in the kitchen, flipping through documents for the company. "I got a letter," she said. He looked up. "From who?" "Baba Lai." His face tensed. He said, "Someone else paid him. That you knew. That you—" Her voice broke. "Is it true?" Silence. Then Dowda let out a long sigh. He set the files down. "Yes and no. I don't understand." He leaned forward. "After your mother died, things were chaotic. Lawyers, banks, the media. I didn't know where to start. Your stepmother said you ran away. I didn't believe her at first, but then the police found no leads. I was broken. I kept pushing. But what? I gave up," he said, shame thick in his voice. "For a time, I gave up. I was tired. I was angry. When the trust fund started sending checks, You took the money?" she asked, voice trembling. "I kept it in a separate account. I swear. I didn't touch a kobo. I thought maybe you were dead. Maybe it was over. But I wasn't," she whispered. "I know," he said. "And that's something I will carry with me for the rest of my life." Silence sat heavy between them. "Do you hate me?" he asked. Ife stared at him for a long time. Then, slowly, she shook her head. "No," she said quietly, "but I don't trust easily anymore." He nodded. "Fair." And then she stood. "I'm going to get my name back," she said, "and I'll do it my way." By the end of the year, Ife had changed. She walked taller. She spoke clearer. Her voice didn't tremble anymore. She gave an interview to the press, telling her story not as a victim, but as a survivor. The nation listened, shocked, and moved. Onabanjo textiles became more than just a brand, it became a symbol of resilience. But one last twist still waited in the shadows. One day, while going through her mother's journals, Ife found a photograph. It was old, faded, but unmistakable. It showed her mother, standing beside a woman. That woman was Madame Sade, not as a stranger, but as a friend. Was Sade once close to her mother? Was the betrayal deeper than anyone imagined? And what secret still lay buried in her mother's past? Ife stared at the photo in disbelief. The woman beside her mother, smiling warmly, holding a cup of tea with familiarity that was Madame Sade. But they weren't strangers in this photo. They were close. Possibly best friends. The date at the back read March 1998, the year before Ife was born. Her hands trembled as she flipped through more pages of her late mother's journal. Slowly, an entry caught her eye, written in sharp, hurried handwriting. "Sade says she's happy for me, but sometimes, when I talk about Tunde or the business, I see something cold in her eyes. Jealousy? Maybe. I hope I'm wrong. She's been my friend since university. Maybe she just needs time to adjust. I'll talk to her again after the baby arrives." Ife sat down hard, her breath shallow. So it was true. Saad wasn't just a jealous stepmother who came after her father's death. She had known her mother from the beginning. She'd been inside their lives, trusted like a sister. And that trust was what destroyed everything. She closed the journal, her heart pounding. This betrayal went deeper than anyone had known. Later that evening, Ife gathered her family in the living room, Uncle Dawda, Aunt Ronki, and her cousins. She laid the photo on the table. "I know the full story now," she said softly. "Said didn't just show up after my mother's death. She was already in our lives. My mum trusted her." They leaned in, shocked as Ife shared the journal entries and the dates. Ronki looked stunned. "So you're saying she planned this? All of it? She envied my mum, the business, the family, everything. When my mum died in that accident, Sade didn't just become my stepmother, she made sure I disappeared. I was a threat to what she believed she deserved." Dawda clenched his jaw. "She killed your mother?" "No," Ife said, shaking her head. "There's no evidence of that. But I think she used the chaos after the accident to take control. She lied, manipulated, and sold me to keep me from ever claiming what was mine." A long silence followed. Then Dawda stood. "I need to speak with the police. If this woman was part of your mother's life, there may be more people who knew the truth and stayed silent." "But what about Baba Lay?" Ronki asked. "Do you believe he really was working for her?" Ife took a deep breath. "He's cruel, but he wasn't the mastermind. He was paid, used, just like I was." Dawda nodded. "Then it's time we end this. Properly." 2 weeks later, a hearing was held in Ibadan's High Court. Said was brought in, dressed in a faded wrapper and scarf, looking nothing like the powerful woman who once ruled the compound. Her eyes darted around the courtroom, but when they landed on Ife, she froze. Ife sat tall beside her lawyer. Her natural hair framed her face, and her dress was elegant, professional, a young woman stepping into her power. The court heard everything. The illegal guardianship, the false reports, the hidden bank transfers traced to Sade's account. Even Baba Lai's written confession was presented, showing she had offered him money in exchange for keeping Ife hidden. The judge looked furious. By the end of the session, Said was sentenced to 22 years in prison for child trafficking, fraud, and obstruction of justice. She didn't weep. She didn't beg. She only stared at Ife and muttered, "Your mother took everything from me. I just took it back." But Ife didn't flinch. "You didn't take anything," she replied quietly. "You only delayed what was already mine." And with that, she walked away. Months passed. Ife returned to Lagos with peace in her heart. The past no longer held her down, it had become her foundation. A story of survival she now shared openly. She launched a youth foundation called the Gatekeepers Initiative, dedicated to helping children who had been trafficked or abused regain their lives and education. With Uncle Dawda's help and her inheritance, she built shelters, sponsored legal support, and created awareness across the country. She also reopened her mother's textile line with a twist. Onabanjo Textiles became one of Nigeria's most empowering women-led businesses. She hired girls from orphanages, trained them in fashion and sewing, and gave them a future. During the grand opening ceremony, media outlets from all over Nigeria showed up. Cameras flashed. Journalists crowded. But Ife only said one thing in her speech that stayed with the world. "They tried to bury me, but I was a seed. And now, I'm growing into something they never saw coming." One evening, she sat under the mango tree in her compound, looking at the stars. Bayo visited her often now, and tonight, he brought something special. "I brought this from court," he said, handing her an envelope. Inside was her official adoption cancellation form and the final closure file from the case. "It's done," he said. "Your name, your life, it's fully yours now." She looked up at him, a soft smile on her lips. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." He nodded. "You saved yourself, Ife. I just opened the gate." And in that quiet moment, she knew. She wasn't the little girl behind the gate anymore. She was the woman who walked through it and built an empire beyond it. If you like this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.